Our next presenter is a young man that I have absolutely grown to love. I love his writing style. He always ends up with a at the end that grabs you. I'm trying to copy him so that I can grow up to be just like our Ben. I am so proud of this young man, and I can't wait to hear how he does this and his further development. I know some of the stuff he does for Rough Riders is old hand, but I watch this man grow as a writer. Please put your hands together for our very own Benjamin Hort. Yeah. Woo, woo.
All right, thank you. So, the title of my lecture for this evening is called The Geometry of Story. And we'll be looking at some ideas about how to structure your story and looking into the elements of what a good story is. Now, I've done a lot of research on story structure. I'm going to share with you some of my findings. So let's get started. I want to start off with the visual arts. So I've been a graphic artist for 20 years now, and I've been a professional graphic designer for 17 years. And I've worked in both the theatrical performances of live theater and as along with film with the, uh, in terms of institutions. So what I bring to the table when I started to learn how to write is I'm starting to see a lot of the design principles and concepts and tools from the visual arts do apply to the written word. And so I'm going to share a couple of those techniques with you today. I'm also going to share some of the strategies from professional writers and editors that I've read and actually know personally. And I want to stress enough that structure is huge, and I can't cover everything, and I had to cut a lot of stuff to really kind of fit in this lecture. So I'm going to try to focus on the big points of structure. And I think you're going to find that it's not exactly what you think it's going to be. When I think about structure, we also think about how systems are logically organized. And stories are essentially logical as they are creative. And we're going to see some of that in this tonight. I also want to show some guiding principles about story structure from the visual arts. In design school, we learned a principle called form and function. Form typically represents the shape of something, like the letter form or a sculpture, and function represents what that form does. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense. With story structures, we focus a lot on form and how our sentences are going to look, but we don't necessarily think about how our stories function. And one of the things that I had to learn on my own through reading certain books that I had to come up with a way of what I want to say in my story. And I found the answer in a book called The Power of Myth. Now, The Power of Myth is written by Joseph Campbell. Right. So this is a really great book. So if you want to buy one book this year, buy The Power of Myth. Joseph Campbell, in one of his chapters, he talks about the functions of myth. And he kind of lists out these four very academic terms. I'm going to go through them really quickly. The first one is the metaphysical. And what he's talking about is like the mysteries of the universe. In a sense, that could be with Carrie's story about death. It could also be a religious ideas of being with God, or the mysteries of intimacy. These are the things that we can't explain, and we're always kind of driven to understand. The other one is called the cosmological, which Joseph calls the shape of the universe, or essentially the physical world. This is what the world that we know about, the stuff that we have to deal with, whether it's Mother Nature, whether it's not paying the bills on time. These are all the things that have to fit within our lives that we're always kind of stressed about. The third one is the sociological. And this essentially is how to behave in society. What are the social rules? Like, what is socially normal for us? And what is our actions, and how do they transform society, or how does it affect society? And the final function is known as the pedagogical. This is kind of the most important one, and it's the one that's being used more often in novels of the modern era. And it's really about how to live a good life under any circumstance. Essentially, is the moral of the story of how to be better than you are today, or how do you get through a difficult situation in your life. Basically, a self-help book, essentially, right? Another principle that I want to pull from are design principles. So we have 7 here, like harmony, proportion, balance, emphasis, rhythm, repetition, and variety. Design principles work like a fractal system. You can apply these principles to the entirety of your story or a single sentence. And design principles are pretty robust. They could take a whole lecture just to explain them. So I'm only going to focus on one big one: harmony. Harmony is really the key design principle for anything. Design principles work for any type of creative pursuit, whether you're making a chair, a desk, a church, or a story. And harmony has to work in all those cases. In terms of a story, your story has plots, characters, themes, story worlds. All of these parts are all kind of working together to come up with the single movement of what you're trying to express in your story. This is essentially what harmony is, right?